It was a bright and calm Saturday morning, the kind of day that seemed perfect for a peaceful drive. The sun shone warmly, casting golden light across the streets and making the leaves on the trees sparkle as a gentle breeze moved through them. In the quiet suburban neighborhood, birds chirped happily, and distant sounds of children playing could be heard, adding a sense of normalcy and comfort to the day. In the middle of this ordinary morning, a teen named Alex was carefully steering their car down a familiar road. Alex was 17, responsible, and always careful when driving. They had spent countless hours practicing and knew every rule of the road. Today, however, wasn't just any drive. Alex was driving their beloved grandmother, Mrs. Thompson, who had insisted on coming along to enjoy some fresh air. She had recently recovered from a minor illness, and this little outing was her way of feeling free and relaxed again. Alex glanced at the grandmother in the passenger seat, smiling warmly. Mrs. Thompson returned the smile, her eyes sparkling with affection. "I'm glad we're doing this," she said softly. "It feels so good to be out and about again." Alex nodded, feeling proud and happy to be spending quality time with her. The bond between them was special. It wasn't just a grandmother-grandchild relationship but a friendship built on love, care, and trust. The car's engine hummed gently, the tires rolling smoothly over the pavement. Alex kept the speed moderate, obeying all traffic rules. Their hands gripped the steering wheel confidently, yet their mind wandered a little, thinking about school, upcoming exams, and the small joys of weekend life. Mrs. Thompson chuckled at something Alex said, and the car was filled with a light, easy laughter. It was the kind of laughter that made anyone nearby smile. As they drove past familiar houses, neighbors waved politely, some stopping to chat briefly from their front yards. Everything seemed calm, ordinary, and perfect. The streets were clean, the sky clear, and there was no hint that this serene moment would soon turn into a nightmare. Mrs. Thompson pointed out a beautiful garden along the roadside, commenting on the blooming flowers. And Alex admired the effort someone had put into creating such a lovely scene. The air smelled fresh and sweet, carrying the faint scent of flowers and freshly cut grass. For Alex, driving with their grandmother was more than just a routine trip. It was a moment of freedom, trust, and joy. They enjoyed these drives, not rushing anywhere, taking the time to talk, laugh, and simply be together. The car wasn't just a vehicle, it was a moving little world where worries felt lighter, and the outside troubles seemed far away. Alex had always felt proud to be trusted with the responsibility of driving, but having their grandmother as a passenger added a layer of happiness and a sense of purpose. Mrs. Thompson occasionally shared stories from her younger days, telling Alex about adventures, mistakes, and funny memories. Alex listened intently, asking questions and sometimes laughing at the unexpected twists in her tales. It was during these conversations that Alex realized how much wisdom and love a person could carry. Sitting next to her, Alex felt safe, confident, and deeply connected. This drive was about more than the destination. It was about the journey, the laughter, and the shared moments. Little did Alex know that this seemingly ordinary drive would soon change everything. The calm, sunny morning and the feeling of safety were about to be replaced with fear, confusion, and disbelief. For now, however, the world seemed perfect, and nothing could disturb their peaceful moment. The gentle hum of the car, the soft chatter, and the laughter all painted a picture of an ordinary day that felt full of warmth and happiness. Everything about the drive seemed normal, so much so that even the idea of danger or trouble felt impossible. Alex was alert and careful, checking mirrors, signaling at turns, and following the rules. Meanwhile, Mrs. Thompson occasionally smiled at passing neighbors and waved, creating a scene of simple, everyday life. It was a perfect snapshot of a normal weekend, an ordinary moment of family bonding. A day that started with nothing but joy, laughter, and calm. The drive seemed endless in its peacefulness, every second filled with light-hearted conversations and small observations about the world outside. Alex noticed how the sunlight reflected off the windows of nearby houses, how the shadows of trees danced on the pavement, and how the occasional dog barked in the distance. Mrs. Thompson admired every detail with a quiet sense of appreciation, making the teen feel proud and content. At this moment, the world outside the car was ordinary, safe, and familiar, and inside the car, Alex and Mrs. Thompson shared warmth, laughter, and an unspoken bond that made the world feel secure. It was a morning that seemed ordinary to anyone else, but for them, it was special, unforgettable, and full of small, precious moments. A drive that felt like freedom, trust, and love. Alex and Mrs. Thompson were enjoying the peaceful drive, the sunlight streaming through the car windows, making the day feel almost magical. The air was fresh, filled with the scent of blooming flowers and warm asphalt, and for a moment, it felt like nothing in the world could go wrong. Suddenly, without warning, a pair of flashing red and blue lights appeared in the rearview mirror, catching Alex completely off guard. Their hearts skipped a beat as the familiar calm of the morning instantly shifted to confusion and worry. Alex glanced at Mrs. Thompson, who immediately noticed the lights, her eyebrows knitting together in concern. "What do they want?" she asked softly, a hint of fear in her voice. Alex slowed down carefully, signaling to pull over to the side of the quiet suburban road. The hum of the engine seemed louder now, and even the chirping birds outside felt distant, replaced by a rising tension inside the car. The police car followed closely, its siren silent but the flashing lights demanding attention. Alex's hands gripped the steering wheel a little tighter, trying to remain calm and composed. They had always been taught to obey the rules and follow instructions from law enforcement, but the suddenness of the stop made their stomach twist in anxiety. Mrs. Thompson placed a reassuring hand on Alex's arm, trying to soothe both herself and the teen. "Stay calm, Alex, everything will be fine," she said. Gently, her voice steady but carrying an edge of worry. As Alex carefully maneuvered the car to the side of the road, their mind raced with questions. Did I do something wrong? Was there a traffic signal I missed? Or maybe a car I didn't notice? Every possibility seemed worse than the last. Each passing second felt heavier, stretching the tension like a tight rope they had to walk on. The street, which had felt peaceful just moments ago, now seemed ominous, the trees casting long shadows as if warning them of what was to come. The police car came to a stop behind them, and an officer stepped out, moving toward their vehicle with purposeful strides. The clack of his boots on the pavement echoed unnaturally loud, making Mrs. Thompson's grip on Alex's arm tighten. Alex rolled down the window slowly, trying to hide the shaking of their hands. "Good morning, officer," Alex said, attempting a polite tone, though their voice quivered slightly. The officer didn't smile or greet them warmly. Instead, he approached with a serious expression, his eyes scanning Alex and Mrs. Thompson with sharp intensity. "License and registration," he demanded, and Alex handed over the documents carefully, trying to maintain composure. Mrs. Thompson peeked over Alex's shoulder, watching the exchange anxiously, her heart beating faster, sensing that something was not quite right. Alex felt their stomach tighten even more as the officer took the documents back to his car, leaving them alone for a few tense minutes. Every passing moment felt like an eternity. The sunlight that had felt warm and comforting now seemed too bright, too glaring, highlighting every detail of the street, the car, and the tense expressions on their faces. Mrs. Thompson tried to distract them, whispering small talk about the flowers and the neighborhood, but Alex could barely focus. Every sound outside the car amplified their anxiety. Then, without any warning, another officer appeared from behind the first, approaching the car quickly. Their hearts both jumped, unsure of what was happening. The silence between the officers and the teen seemed deafening, a heavy tension that hung in the air. Each second felt loaded with uncertainty, and for the first time that morning, Alex felt completely powerless, unable to predict what was about to happen. Even though they were innocent, Alex's mind raced with fear, imagining the worst-case scenarios. They thought about how quickly life could change in moments, how ordinary mornings could turn into chaos. Mrs. Thompson placed both hands on Alex's shoulders, her eyes wide but calm. "Whatever happens, stay calm. Don't argue. We'll get through this together," she whispered, and Alex nodded, drawing strength from her courage. At that moment, the ordinary drive that had started with laughter and warmth transformed into a tense, almost surreal scene. The peaceful suburban street, the sunlight, and the gentle breeze all seemed to fade into the background as the presence of the police created a world of uncertainty, fear, and anticipation. Alex and Mrs. Thompson were about to face something they never expected, a twist in their day that would leave them shocked, questioning everything they thought they knew about fairness, justice, and safety. Alex and Mrs. Thompson sat frozen in the car as the two officers approached, each step heavy and deliberate. The sunlight no longer felt warm, it seemed harsh, glaring, exposing every nervous twitch and every bead of sweat on Alex's forehead. Mrs. Thompson gripped the edge of the seat, her knuckles white, trying to stay calm for both herself and Alex, but inside, her heart was pounding wildly. A feeling of unease settled over them like a heavy blanket, thick and suffocating. The first officer returned to the driver's side window, his expression unreadable, and leaned slightly closer, his voice firm and sharp. "You are under arrest," he said, as if pronouncing a sentence from which there was no escape. Alex blinked, thinking they hadn't heard correctly. "Wait, what?" Alex stammered, "I didn't do anything wrong, I..." The officer cut them off, repeating the words with no hesitation. "You are being arrested for violating traffic laws." Alex's stomach sank, and a cold, heavy feeling spread through their chest. How could this be happening? They had been careful, driving slowly and cautiously, signaling every turn, obeying every rule, and now, in one moment, all that care and responsibility seemed meaningless, replaced by a sudden, shocking accusation. Mrs. Thompson spoke up, her voice trembling but strong. "Officer, you must be mistaken. My grandson is a careful driver, he wouldn't do anything wrong." But her words seemed to fall on deaf ears. The officers barely glanced at her, their focus sharp and unwavering, as if they had already decided the truth without hearing anyone's side. Alex's hands shook uncontrollably as they tried to explain. "Please. You must check the dash cam or something. I didn't do anything wrong." The tension inside the car was unbearable. Every second stretched into eternity. Each sound, the rustle of leaves, a distant dog barking, the soft hum of the car engine, felt amplified, almost mocking in the silence that surrounded them. Mrs. Thompson reached over and held Alex's hand tightly, offering a small comfort amid the chaos. "Stay calm, Alex. Don't panic," she whispered, her eyes full of worry but also determination. The officers began reading Alex their rights, the words sounding distant and surreal, as if they belonged to another world, a world where innocence didn't matter and where even careful, law-abiding teens could suddenly find themselves accused and restrained. Alex's mind raced, trying to understand how this could happen. How could one moment of ordinary life, driving with a loving grandmother, turn into something so frightening and unjust? A neighbor across the street had stopped to watch, their expression a mix of confusion and concern. They could see the fear in the car, the tension that had replaced the laughter from just a few minutes ago, yet the officers seemed determined to proceed, ignoring questions, ignoring pleas, as though the accusation had already sealed Alex's fate. Alex tried to stay composed, repeating in their head everything they had learned about dealing with police. "Take deep breaths, stay calm, don't argue, hand over the documents." But despite these thoughts, a lump of fear grew heavier in their chest. They could feel it tightening, a cold weight that seemed impossible to shake. Mrs. Thompson noticed Alex's trembling and squeezed their hand harder, whispering, "We'll get through this, I promise." Then came the moment that felt like a punch in the gut. The officer began explaining the supposed violation, pointing to a minor traffic detail Alex didn't even realize was being observed. It felt unreal, absurd, like the accusation came from nowhere, yet here it was, concrete and threatening. The teen had done nothing wrong, yet the weight of authority and procedure pressed down, leaving them powerless. Inside the car, a whirlwind of emotions collided: fear, disbelief, anger, confusion, and a desperate hope that this was all a misunderstanding. The ordinary, sunny morning had vanished, replaced by a moment of tension that seemed like it would last forever. Mrs. Thompson tried to stay calm, but even she could not hide the fear and shock. Both of them felt trapped in a situation beyond their control, a moment that would test their courage, patience, and faith in justice. As the officers prepared to take further action, Alex realized that this was not just about a traffic stop, it was about their life being turned upside down in a single moment, about the vulnerability of innocence in the face of authority, about the terrifying uncertainty of what would happen next. And in that moment, Alex clung to their grandmother's hand, drawing strength from her presence, ready to face whatever came, even as their heart raced with fear. The moment the teen was told they were under arrest, the world around the car seemed to shift, as if the air itself had thickened. Every sound, every movement, felt magnified. The quiet suburban street that had seemed so safe and ordinary just minutes ago was now charged with tension and uncertainty. Mrs. Thompson gripped Alex's hand tightly, her heart pounding, and glanced nervously at the neighbors who had begun to gather, whispers and murmurs carrying through the warm morning air. Across the street, a neighbor, Mr. Carter, had been watering his garden when he noticed the flashing lights and the officers approaching. His brow furrowed in confusion as he realized something serious was happening. He set down the hose and walked closer, trying to understand the situation. "What's going on here?" he asked aloud, though the officers barely acknowledged him. Their focus remained on the car, on Alex and Mrs. Thompson, and the quiet authority in their stance made anyone watching hesitate to intervene. Mrs. Thompson's voice trembled as she tried to speak to the officers again. "Please, you must be mistaken, my grandson is innocent, he's a careful driver," but the words seemed to vanish into the air, unheard. Her pleas were swallowed by the tense silence, punctuated only by the occasional rustle of leaves in the breeze. Alex's eyes were wide with fear, their hands gripping the steering wheel tightly. They could feel every heartbeat pounding in their chest, every thought spinning in panic. As the officers began giving further instructions, some neighbors pulled out their phones, quietly recording the scene. Concern spread quickly among those watching, and soon, murmurs turned into anxious whispers. "Did you see that? He hasn't done anything," said one, while another shook their head in disbelief. The street, once peaceful, was now filled with people who couldn't believe what was unfolding in front of them. Everyone was united in confusion, concern, and a sense of injustice. From inside the car, Alex could see the growing crowd, their presence both comforting and nerve-wracking. Each familiar face reflected worry, fear, and anger, and yet, the authority of the officers made it impossible for anyone to act directly, creating a tension between the powerless bystanders and the commanding figures of the law. Mrs. Thompson, despite her worry, tried to keep Alex calm, whispering encouragement and reminding them to stay composed. "Don't argue, Alex. We'll sort this out, just stay calm," she said, her voice strong but trembling at the edges. Some of the neighbors began calling family members, trying to warn them. Others muttered prayers or reassurances under their breath. The ordinary weekend morning had transformed into a scene of collective anxiety and fear. Everyone watching felt the injustice keenly, as if it were happening to them. The air was heavy with tension, the kind that makes time feel slower, stretching every second into an eternity. Meanwhile, Alex tried to think clearly, though panic threatened to take over. Their mind raced, searching for answers, for a way to prove innocence, for a way to make the situation stop. Every second inside the car felt suffocating, the warmth of the sunlight replaced by the cold weight of uncertainty. The teen clung to the only source of comfort, the presence of their grandmother, her hand steady on theirs, her quiet strength a lifeline amidst chaos. The officers finally stepped back slightly, giving Alex a moment of pause, but the tension did not ease. It only grew heavier with every glance from the crowd, every whispered comment. Every heart watching seemed to beat in unison with the fear and disbelief inside the car. Mrs. Thompson looked at the neighbors and nodded slightly, grateful for their concern, feeling the warmth of a small but meaningful community in the midst of such a frightening event. And then came the realization: this was no longer just about a traffic stop or a misunderstanding. It was about how quickly life could change, how innocence could be challenged, how ordinary mornings could turn into moments of fear, humiliation, and uncertainty. Alex, despite being terrified, drew courage from the reactions of those around them, knowing that people cared, that their innocence was seen even if the authorities seemed blind. The tension on the street, the whispers of the neighbors, and the anxious presence of Mrs. Thompson all created a vivid, almost cinematic moment, one that would stay in everyone's memory long after the day was over. In that moment, everyone understood the fragility of peace, the suddenness of injustice, and the strength of human connection in times of fear. Alex's hands slowly unclenched the steering wheel slightly, breathing deeply, gathering every ounce of courage for what was coming next. After the tense standoff on the quiet street, the officers finally signaled for Alex to step out of the car, their faces serious and unreadable. The teen's stomach churned with anxiety as they carefully got out, feeling the weight of the accusations pressing down like a heavy fog. Mrs. Thompson followed closely, her hand lightly resting on Alex's shoulder, a silent gesture of support and reassurance, though her heart pounded fiercely with worry. The first officer motioned for them to stand near the sidewalk while he returned to his car. Alex and Mrs. Thompson exchanged a glance, their eyes filled with fear, confusion, and disbelief. How could this be happening? Everything felt surreal, like a nightmare they couldn't wake from. The neighbors who had been watching from a distance whispered among themselves, some shaking their heads, some offering quiet words of encouragement, yet everyone felt powerless to change the unfolding situation. Inside the police car, the officer began reviewing dashcam footage and notes from the traffic sensors. His face remained expressionless, but his eyes narrowed as he paused, rewound, and examined every second of the recording. Alex could see him through the car window, each movement deliberate, analytical, creating a strange mix of anxiety and hope. Could the truth finally clear their name, or would it confirm the misunderstanding? The uncertainty was suffocating. Meanwhile, the second officer approached with a notebook, jotting down witness statements from the neighbors. Their voices shook as they tried to explain what they saw. He was careful, driving slowly. One neighbor said, "Nothing illegal happened," said another. Each statement added another layer to the investigation, slowly building a picture that didn't match the arrest. Yet, despite the growing evidence, the process felt painstakingly slow, and Alex's heart continued to race with each passing moment. Mrs. Thompson held Alex's hand tightly, whispering small reassurances. "We just need to stay calm. Let them do their work," she said. Though her voice was steady, Alex could feel the trembling underneath. The teen's mind raced with what-ifs, imagining every possible outcome. From being released immediately to being taken to the station, every possibility felt terrifying, and the uncertainty seemed endless. As the officers continued their investigation, they began to notice inconsistencies in the reports and dashcam footage. Certain details didn't add up. The supposed violation was minor, almost non-existent. The way Alex had stopped at the crosswalk, the way they signaled, the way the grandmother had been safely buckled in, all these details began to paint a picture that contradicted the initial accusation. The teen's heart leapt slightly with cautious hope, though fear still lingered. The officers exchanged quiet words with each other, pointing at the footage, reviewing evidence again and again. Their methodical approach, though intimidating, began to offer a glimmer of reassurance to Alex and Mrs. Thompson, that somewhere behind the stern faces and serious procedures, the truth was being uncovered. The teen felt the tension slowly shift, just enough to let a small breath of hope escape. Neighbors watched quietly, sensing the subtle changes in the scene. The officers' expressions softened slightly, and their body language suggested that something wasn't right with the original accusation. Yet, the process was careful, deliberate, and slow, teaching Alex and Mrs. Thompson an unexpected lesson about patience, the importance of evidence, and the complexity of authority. Every passing second felt critical, as if the outcome of the day depended entirely on the meticulous work of these officers. Finally, after what felt like hours though was only minutes, the lead officer returned to Alex and Mrs. Thompson, a thoughtful expression on his face. "We're reviewing everything carefully," he said. "We need to ensure the facts are correct before taking any further steps." The words, though neutral, carried a faint promise of justice, a subtle recognition that maybe, just maybe, the truth would prevail. In that moment, Alex felt a cautious sense of relief. Though anxiety still lingered, they realized that even in frightening and seemingly unfair situations, evidence and careful investigation could reveal the truth. The ordinary drive that had turned into chaos was slowly moving toward resolution, and the teen clung to the hope that justice, finally, might be on the horizon. After what felt like an eternity of waiting, the tension on the quiet street began to shift. The officers were no longer merely checking boxes or following a routine. They were actively piecing together the truth. Every frame of the dashcam, every witness statement, every small detail of the situation was being examined with care. Alex and Mrs. Thompson watched nervously, their hearts pounding, unsure of what would happen next. The lead officer called over his partner, pointing at the footage on the laptop inside the patrol car. Their voices were low and serious, but Alex could sense the change in their tone. Something was different, something was breaking apart in the narrative that had led to the arrest. The teen's chest tightened, a mix of fear and hope battling within. They held Mrs. Thompson's hand, gripping it tightly as if drawing strength from her calm presence. Then came the moment of clarity, the turning point that neither Alex nor Mrs. Thompson would ever forget. The officer motioned for them to come closer, gesturing toward the screen. "Look at this," he said, his voice quieter now, almost hesitant, as if unsure how to deliver the news. Alex leaned forward, peering at the footage, their eyes scanning the familiar street, the car, and the moments that had caused so much chaos. It was there, plain and clear, a small but critical detail that changed everything. The dashcam revealed that Alex had followed every traffic rule perfectly, slowing down at crosswalks, signaling every turn, stopping well within the lines, and driving carefully under the watchful eye of their grandmother. The supposed violation that had led to the arrest was either misinterpreted by the officers at the scene or an error in the report. But the evidence left no room for doubt. Alex's heart raced with relief, disbelief, and a rising sense of triumph. Mrs. Thompson let out a quiet sigh of relief, almost releasing a small laugh of joy. "They see it now," she whispered, her eyes misting over. Alex could hardly believe it either. The fear that had gripped their chest for what felt like hours finally began to loosen, replaced by a warmth that spread through their body. The truth, finally, was on their side, and it was undeniable. The officers exchanged looks, silently acknowledging the mistake. Their body language softened, the stern faces slowly transforming into expressions of understanding and apology. One of them finally spoke. "It appears there was an error in the initial report. You followed all the rules correctly, and there is no violation here." The words were like a weight lifting off Alex's shoulders, a confirmation that the nightmare they had been trapped in was ending. For the neighbors who had gathered, the realization sparked quiet murmurs of relief. Some nodded approvingly at the teen, others whispered words of encouragement and admiration. The once tense street, filled with flashing lights and whispered concern, began to return to calm. The ordinary warmth of the sunny morning slowly crept back in, though the memory of fear still lingered in every heart present. Alex felt a surge of gratitude toward their grandmother, whose calmness and unwavering support had been a lifeline during the terrifying ordeal. Mrs. Thompson smiled, squeezing Alex's hand. "You stayed strong. We stayed together. That's what mattered," she said softly, and Alex nodded, realizing the truth in her words. In the middle of chaos, fear, and confusion, it was their bond and patience that had helped them survive and finally see justice restored. The officers apologized formally, their voices sincere, acknowledging the undue stress and fear caused by the false arrest. It was not just a correction of the record, it was a moment of accountability, a recognition that mistakes, even small ones, could deeply affect innocent people. Alex listened quietly, nodding, feeling a strange mixture of relief, gratitude, and lingering shock. And then, as the dashcam footage and evidence were officially cleared, Alex and Mrs. Thompson could finally breathe fully. The world felt lighter, calmer, almost miraculous after the storm of fear and uncertainty they had endured. The ordinary drive that had started so peacefully, had transformed into a lesson in patience, courage, and the importance of truth, and in that moment, both of them knew that they would never forget the fear, the tension, and the overwhelming relief that came with the discovery of the truth. The sunny morning, the quiet street, and the surrounding neighbors now seemed like witnesses to a small but powerful victory, a moment when justice, patience, and resilience had prevailed, and Alex, hand in hand with their grandmother, finally felt safe again, ready to continue their journey, wiser and more aware of the fragility of life and the power of staying calm under pressure. After the officers confirmed Alex's innocence, a wave of relief washed over both Alex and Mrs. Thompson. A heavy weight that had been pressing on their chests for what felt like hours suddenly lifted. The tension that had filled the air since the unexpected stop slowly dissolved, leaving a quiet, almost surreal calm. Mrs. Thompson exhaled deeply, gripping Alex's hand tightly. "It's over, Alex. You're safe now," she whispered, and Alex nodded, tears brimming in their eyes, feeling a mixture of relief, exhaustion, and disbelief. The officers stepped closer, their expressions now noticeably softer, one of them clearing his throat before speaking. "We sincerely apologize for the mistake and any distress caused," he said, his tone sincere, not forced. Alex could hear the weight of accountability in his words. It wasn't just a formality, the apology carried meaning, acknowledging the fear, confusion, and embarrassment that the teen and their grandmother had endured. Mrs. Thompson gave a small nod, her eyes glistening, appreciating the acknowledgement after such a frightening ordeal. Neighbors who had been quietly observing the entire event slowly began to disperse, though some lingered to offer support. One neighbor, who had been recording the situation from a distance, came forward, smiling gently. "I'm so glad everything is okay," they said. Their words, though simple, reminded Alex that even in moments of fear, the kindness and concern of others mattered. The tension of the morning had transformed into a sense of community, understanding, and relief. Alex took a moment to process everything that had happened. The ordinary drive that had started with laughter and sunshine had turned into a terrifying lesson about how quickly life could change, about how easily fear and misunderstanding could overshadow innocence. Yet now, with the discovery of the truth and the officer's apology, the teen felt a renewed sense of clarity, patience, and appreciation for the little things, like a grandmother's comforting hand, a neighbor's concern, and the calm After chaos. Mrs. Thompson smiled warmly at Alex, brushing a strand of hair from their face. You stayed strong. You did exactly what you were supposed to do, she said softly. Her voice carried a mix of pride and relief, and Alex felt an overwhelming gratitude for her presence. For Mrs. Thompson, this had been more than just a scare. It was a reminder of the fragility of safety, the importance of guidance, and the power of love and support. Together, they had endured a moment that tested courage, patience, and trust, and they had come out stronger on the other side. The officers, now clearly aware of the emotional impact of their error, offered further reassurance, explaining the steps they would take to correct the record and prevent future misunderstandings. We'll make sure this is properly documented, one officer said. No one should have to experience what you just went through. Alex nodded quietly, absorbing the gravity of the situation, understanding that while mistakes could happen, accountability and honesty were crucial in restoring faith in justice. As they prepared to leave, Alex and Mrs. Thompson took a deep breath, savoring the return of normalcy. The street, which had been filled with flashing lights, whispers, and tense energy, was finally quiet again, filled with the soft sounds of birds, the rustle of leaves, and the distant hum of everyday life. It was a peaceful ending to a morning that had started with calm and laughter but had spiraled into chaos and fear. Walking back to their car, hand in hand, Alex realized how fragile ordinary moments could be, and how important it was to stay calm, trust the process, and rely on those who cared. Mrs. Thompson squeezed their hand gently. We'll always face challenges together, she said. Nothing can break that bond. Alex smiled faintly, feeling a mix of relief, love, and determination, ready to continue life with a newfound perspective. The ordinary drive that had once been just a small escape from routine had become a lesson in patience, courage, and justice. The false arrest, though terrifying, had strengthened the bond between the teen and their grandmother, reminded the community of the value of observation and support, and highlighted the importance of truth prevailing in the face of fear. For Alex, it was a day they would never forget. A day that transformed ordinary streets, familiar houses, and a sunny morning into a story of resilience, compassion, and ultimately, justice. The events of that day lingered in Alex's mind long after the car returned to its driveway. Even though the false arrest had been resolved, the emotions, the fear, and the relief created a lasting impression. Alex realized that ordinary moments, like a simple drive with a loved one, could suddenly become unpredictable, and that life could change in the blink of an eye. Every heartbeat, every gesture of support, and every careful action mattered more than ever. Sitting in the quiet living room with Mrs. Thompson, Alex reflected on what had happened, thinking about the roller coaster of emotions they had experienced: fear, anxiety, frustration, and finally, relief. I never thought something like this could happen to us, Alex admitted softly, their voice tinged with lingering disbelief. Mrs. Thompson nodded knowingly, her eyes filled with both concern and understanding. It's a harsh reminder of how unpredictable life can be, she said gently, but it also shows how strong we are when we face it together. The teen thought about the moments of uncertainty, when fear seemed overwhelming, and realized that the calm presence of their grandmother had been their anchor, guiding them through the storm. It wasn't just about avoiding panic, it was about trust, patience, and relying on people who cared. Alex understood that courage wasn't the absence of fear but the ability to stay composed in the face of it, to act thoughtfully even when everything seemed uncertain. Reflecting further, Alex also considered the role of the officers, the investigation, and the neighbors who had quietly watched and supported from a distance. The experience highlighted the importance of evidence, careful investigation, and accountability. It was clear that mistakes could happen, but truth and justice could prevail when people did their jobs diligently and responsibly. The teen realized that standing firm in innocence, staying calm, and letting facts speak for themselves were crucial lessons from this ordeal. Mrs. Thompson smiled, breaking the heavy reflection with warmth. This day will stay with us forever, not for fear, but for what we learned, she said. It's a story of courage, trust, and resilience. Alex nodded, seeing the wisdom in her words. They understood that life had a way of teaching lessons in the most unexpected ways. Sometimes those lessons came with fear and uncertainty, but they also brought growth, awareness, and a stronger bond between people who mattered most. Alex also thought about the power of community, of being seen and supported even when things seemed hopeless. The neighbors' quiet concern, their whispered encouragement, and the awareness that people cared provided a small but meaningful sense of security. It was a reminder that even in frightening moments, humanity and empathy could shine through, offering reassurance and hope when it was most needed. As the day drew to a close, Alex looked out the window at the street where the incident had taken place. The quiet, familiar surroundings now felt different, almost transformed by the events that had unfolded. It was no longer just an ordinary neighborhood street. It was a symbol of resilience, patience, and the importance of standing firm in the face of adversity. The teen felt a mixture of gratitude and determination, vowing to carry these lessons forward into life, to be cautious, compassionate, and courageous in every situation. The experience had changed both Alex and Mrs. Thompson in subtle but powerful ways. They had faced fear, uncertainty, and injustice, and had come through stronger, more aware, and more grateful for the ordinary joys of life. The laughter, the drives, the shared moments that had once seemed so simple but now felt precious. Alex understood that challenges, even terrifying ones, could reveal character, strengthen bonds, and teach lessons that no ordinary day could offer. Finally, as they shared a quiet evening together, Alex and Mrs. Thompson reflected on what mattered most: trust, patience, and the unwavering bond between them. The false arrest, though frightening and unfair, had ultimately become a story of resilience, love, and the triumph of truth. It reminded them, and anyone who would hear the story, that even in moments of fear and uncertainty, courage, support, and integrity could guide the way, turning chaos into growth, and fear into a lasting lesson about life.